Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Welcome to our next Bitesize webinar, our September Bitesize webinar as part of the SFMI series. Here we're hosting EQUANS, which is a newly formed company, but part of the NG group. So you'll know them as NG from the past. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a short background to the SFMI, because I'm sure we have some new faces amongst the group. So the SFMI, we are the Sustainable Facilities Management Index. Our purpose, our reason for being, is to embed sustainability into the management and operation of the FM sector. We do this because we've got a lot of experience of working within the FM industry, and we believe that the FM sector plays a key role in the sustainability function of organizations. It has many different service lines and has the ability to take responsibility and to influence sustainability across the environmental and social remits with its clients. So therefore our purpose is obviously to try and upskill businesses within the sector and to try and provide a roadmap to help them become more sustainable, both within their operations, but also how they can integrate sustainability into the services so they can have a greater impact, especially in these days of moving towards net zero targets and such. We do this through a number of methods. We work with our partners to understand and explain the issues surrounding sustainability in FM. We provide a sustainability roadmap, and we deliver that through our annual audit program, which is currently underway, just started yesterday. We upskill the FM sector. So obviously this is one of those tactics that we use to upskill the sector. And also we celebrate success and share in the excellence of September. At the end of the webinar, I'll be announcing the date of our annual awards events that we have, where we're celebrating the success of sustainability in the FM sector. So my colleague Maddie will put the link for companies to sign into that in the comments bar through the during this webinar. So why are we here today? We're here to talk about building a responsible business culture within an organization, which is by no means an easy feat. It's a very difficult approach, and who better to have this discussion with than EQUANS, formerly known as NG. So today we have Candice, who's the head of responsible business at EQUANS, and Petra, who's the responsible business manager. They're going to be taking us through their approach, which has been audited on an annual basis by the SFMI, and the companies score incredibly high results, incredibly high scores, especially across their governance approach to responsible business. So really looking forward to hearing how the team have built themselves into the processes that they conduct today. So throughout the event, if you have any questions that you want to field to Candice and Petra, please do use the questions tab or the comments tab, and then what I'll be doing is I'll be picking out those at the end, and we'll have a bit of a discussion with between the three of us at the end. So Candice, I believe it's over to you.
Thanks, Chris. I'm just going to share my screen and just let me know if you can see that.
That's we can see. Yep, that's your emails. We can see. There we go. Now
one email. It wasn't a confidential email. It was a panelist invite. But thank you very much, and obviously delighted to be able to share our experience with you today. So, as you correctly pointed out a number of times, and thank you, Chris, the name EQUANS is probably not very familiar to most of you. So we were previously known in the UK as NG UK and Ireland, and we still operate under the NG group, with EQUANS now capturing all of our services-led activity, and that's across the whole globe, not only in our UK operations. We continue with our purpose of making zero carbon happen, and EQUANS overall has a mission to connect, power and protect by empowering businesses and communities to fully embrace all of the energy, digital, and industrial transitions that are currently redesigning how we operate. As a snapshot, in the UK, we're a £3 billion turnover business. We have 13,500 employees, and we're a strategic supplier to government. Our core capabilities are in energy with our client solutions and EV charge points, technical services with our facilities management arm, and regeneration with our new build and refurbishment works. But returning to the theme of building a responsible business, I felt it was important initially just to recognize that there's been such a clear evolution of responsible business over the years, initially focusing on environment and then expanding into sustainability. But even the understanding of sustainability has broadened across our understanding of all of the sustainable development goals. And in developing the Charter principles and the supporting commitments, the focus for us was on how could we drive our contribution to society more widely, and then also to be able to demonstrate this. So there are 4 clear areas of focus for the Charter around fair business growth, transparency and accountability, being a fair employer, and supporting our communities and environment. And then within each of these principles, we have a number of commitments. And each of these commitments in turn then have their own KPIs that they're supported by. And those KPIs are on key issues, including speed of supplier payments, customer satisfaction, environmental and social responsibility, diversity and inclusion, which is definitely growing in importance, and paying our employees a real living wage. So overall, our Charter is reflective of business strategies, and the Charter itself can be seen almost as the wraparound governance of our approach to being a responsible business. And what I mean about that is, we've come along on this journey where it's no longer a silo of a one-man band in a business being responsible for delivering environmental sustainability, or now even this broader responsible business piece. This is something that is really integrated into core business strategies across all functions and operations. And we're really the facilitators and the governors of how that happens. So the real importance for us, when developing the Charter, was to move away from that traditional corporate responsibility approach and into the broader sense of, what makes good business sense, because we know that that is what attracts and retains talent as well. Our Responsible Business Charter itself was launched in September 2018, and that coincided with a move to us using the term responsible business across the organization. And the great thing about using this common language is really that everybody understands what it means, and people understand what responsible behaviors or actions they can adopt that will help to contribute to the EQUANS journey. So we also, at the same time, bearing in mind how we could demonstrate that we were, supporting society and the environment more broadly, we formed an independent scrutiny board to hold us to account. And that's validated by the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. So they challenge us where they see that we can deliver more, and they also hold us to account so that our stakeholders can have confidence that we are actually doing what we say we're doing. So in addition to our own responsible business report that we publish on an annual basis, the scrutiny board themselves publish an annual report that evaluates the business performance against the RB objectives that we set out, and those are both available on our website. So I've spoken about a little bit about the considerations that we made when developing the Charter, and there was obviously a lot more to that journey. So prior to the Charter being in existence, the business had existing strategies and sustainability practices in place. But as I mentioned on the previous slide, the RB Charter was actually an evolution of our approach to this. So the key thing that ultimately fed into the development of the Charter was a robust materiality assessment process. And that included engagement with stakeholders on what was important to them and also what their expectations were of us. And interestingly, the materiality assessment placed tackling social inequality and exclusion on the medium to low scale. Now, bearing in mind that was carried out in 2018, we've seen a significant shift in this since then. And I think, I just wanted to share that because I think it reflects the importance of regularly revisiting materiality. So As part of the process, we reviewed a number of externally available guides and publications to provide focus, and that included the Sustainable Development Goals and the Social Value Act. We also conducted a survey with the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, and they spoke to local government to identify key areas for focus because they're a very important customer base for us. Gathering all of that data, we then needed to understand what the key themes were to prioritize. And so we consulted with stakeholder groups, both internally and externally. So the internal engagement was predominantly focused on functional representation from HR, procurement, finance, legal, as well as the divisional CEOs and their leadership boards. And we also consulted with the National Employee Forum to obtain feedback on the Charter. And the National Employee Forum is made up of employee representatives across the business, so it really helped us to consult with the front line. Externally, we engaged with a number of partners and independent organizations, including the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, Business in the Community, the Advisory Board, and also the Blueprint for Better Business. So there were a few challenges that were encountered along the way, and they can serve as some lessons learned. Timing. So when the development of the Charter was conceived, we had actually just finished a round of engagements on our company purpose of making zero carbon happen. So it was a slight change in message and also a refocus for a number of stakeholders. Then what to focus on, because the breadth and depth of RB is huge, and there could have been literally hundreds of issues or KPIs to consider. And we started out with a much longer list that was eventually slimmed down to identify what was most material and most important. And I say most because it doesn't mean that the other issues aren't important. It's just, what is most important to us right now? What's the pressing issues, and what do we have control to influence? And then that kind of ties into consideration for setting the right KPIs and setting KPIs at the right level. Because KPIs at the beginning of the journey need to be both challenging and achievable, but depending on where you are in your journey as a company, setting them at a lower level might not be the right choice for you. So, and you might need to have a balance of different levels of KPIs across different areas. So for example, if you have a look at our charter and the commitments, we might have varying levels of KPIs depending on how mature each area is. Also, how to pitch the message to avoid complexity. Because the charter packs in such a lot of detail, it needs to be pitched at the right level to different audiences. And the key thing is that people need to be able to go away and understand what it means. And they don't need to understand the whole plan, but they need to understand how it applies to them. So we've developed a set of responsible behaviors for different roles in the business to support this message. Launching the charter probably links in with timing again in terms of getting the message out to people, because I mentioned that it was launched in September 2018, and we wanted to get that out before the annual employee objective setting window and to feed into the business planning. So if that window was missed, then embedding the charter within operational deliverables may well not have been achievable in the same way for that year one. So I'll now hand over to Petra to discuss how we embed the charter in a bit more detail.
Petra, you're on mute, just so you know that.
Always happens, doesn't it? I was just about to say that this charter, this slide shows a broad range of different stakeholders that we're engaging with in developing the charter, but also in delivering the charter and engaging with them throughout. So my bit I'm going to cover today is in relation to how we sort of created buy-in and engagement and accountability for the charter. So first of all, none of that really happens overnight. That's really important to emphasize. In the buy-in development, it was really important for us to develop a good communications campaign for employees, explain the launch of the charter, what it meant. We realized quite quickly that it couldn't be just a one-off. It had to be an ongoing engagement. And even now, it's very much part of the communication we do on an annual basis, part of our summer communications 6 weeks of summer campaign. Like this year, we held some fun IB Charter speed dating events where functional colleagues spoke to participants about how they delivered on the charter and gave some tips on how they could deliver on a range of topics from ethics to customer satisfaction. So it's keeping it alive really is really key. Another important thing is, when people coming on board, like new people in the business for induction or new relationship we're forming with partners and clients, keeping that sort of RB charter alive in people's minds was quite important to create the buy-in. Accountability piece, I think Candice touched on that. A lot of that was around, how can we retrofit and review the annual objective setting guidance that we put out to the business. So we made sure that there was guidance around how to set your responsible business objective. They were meaningful and weren't just about volunteering. They were actually about how you deliver through your role to meeting the charter. And then part of that was really making sure that we had the software that we could review and download the objectives to make sure that we could sense check how our employees were how they were developing their accountability for the charter. And what's been really interesting is over the last couple of years, we've really seen a shift to much more kind of focused objectives, away from just social value, away from the kind of easy kind of wins, but more focused around what people do as in their roles. So that's been it's very successful. Another aspect really was around this creating the KPI buy-in, both at the corporate divisional level, so that everyone could be held accountable. Different parts of the business deliver differently to the charter, and I think it's important to recognise you cannot have a one-size-fits-all for them all. A construction business to the FM side of the business are very different impacts, and we realised that quite quickly that we would have to look at our charter and how it's delivered differently based on the different divisions. Very important aspect for us was as well that you can't measure you can't manage what you can't measure, really. HR the saying, as they say, we had to have a digital system in place that would supplement all the systems we currently had, the HR, the finance systems, all of those bits. We realized, were sufficient to meet some of our needs, but there were gaps, and those gaps we had to develop some bespoke software solutions. So we built bespoke software for our carbon, our social value, and various other indicators for which we couldn't get a suitable system, alternative from what we already had. And that was it's been really helpful to be able to record, manage, compare year on year, contrast, and delve really deep in, and also see it, cascade it at different levels. So that's been really, really good, from contract all the way up to division. There's kind of things that can be done through the software. The important thing, and I think Candice touched on it, was about reviews, functional reviews, quarterly divisional and exec reviews, and kind of external scrutiny board reviews were really important about keeping people engaged and creating accountability in the business. So that's kind of the bits that sort of touched on there. And then the last bit I kind of wanted to go on to the next slide, which is some of the tips that we think you could take forward really from the journey we've been on. And it is a journey, so we're still kind of on it, but we definitely hope some of these things help. So one of the biggest things for us was obviously create that buy-in at the top, and making sure it's connected to the business strategy. It's not just a bolt-on, has to be owned by the business. Everyone needs to be talking about the charter, not just the RB team. Start planning early. I think it took us over a year to get the RB charter off the ground. It involved a huge amount of research work, as Candice mentioned. So it's not something that can happen quickly. The one thing we learned about is it's not about reinventing the wheel. There's so many frameworks, ISO standards, guides, so many things out there that you can start from. So you can just do your market research, look at what works for you, and base your charter strategy on that. Engage is our biggest sort of tip. Internal and external stakeholders, co-development. It's quite interesting how many even external stakeholders are willing to talk to you about when you're setting your KPIs and your objectives about what they could look like. So it's a really good thing to do. And obviously throughout the process, just carry on engaging with your stakeholders. And I mentioned earlier that what you can't manage, what you can't measure. So making sure you've got all the systems in place, whether it's something that you need to develop and potentially, assign some actual budget for. But it's really important that you're able to manage and measure everything so that you know what's being improved, what's changing. And then communication is key. We realized really early on that we had to have other teams talking about the RB Charter, not just the RB team. So the communications team centrally was very much on board with the message. It's very much something that the BD team, the HR team, learning and development team, procurement team, they all speak the language of the Charter. They all talk about it as though they own it and very much they contribute to it. And that's something that's been really nice to see. And I'm sure that's something, if you can create that buzz around something like that, it gets a lot of people engaged. And then the last two really, which is around frequency of progress and reviews. I don't think you can review something enough. I think it's good to have monthly, quarterly reviews to make sure that KPIs are kept alive, that people are keeping focus on them, and that people are committed to them. And then the last one really is around things change, the world changes. We know what's happened with the pandemic, and because of that, so could potentially the focus of the Charter. The Charter's been alive for a few years. We have reviewed it. We've added some KPIs. We've amended others. It is, and the same will go with any sort of strategy you're working on. I think the important is keeping it alive, keeping it reviewed, to make sure it's focused on what's happening right now in the business and beyond. So those are kind of my slides. So over to you. I think it's on the Q&A now, isn't it? Hello?
Yes, we're on to Q&A. I don't know how you want to manage that, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute as I started talking. I did
for a second, I thought maybe I didn't cut off or something.
No. Thank you very much, Petra, and thank you very much, Candice, for that overview. It must be quite difficult to condense what is how long has the Charter been alive for?
From 2018.
So yeah, you're
condensing and if you think about
years.
Probably a year or so conception before that. So it's quite a few, it's been a long time. It's been.
So we're condensing 4 years of work into a 25-minute slot, really, which is obviously quite difficult. So obviously it's been 3 years of being alive. So from you mentioned about keeping it alive and making changes based on changes in materiality. What kind of trends have you noticed since 2018 in terms of the additions and the importance of different elements of responsible business to your stakeholders?
I'm going to ask Petra to give her thoughts on that one, because Petra was actually here at the inception, whereas I joined just at the end of 2019. But I guess I reflected on some changes that have already been incorporated into what we do in social value and in D&I, when I talked about tackling social inequality, for example, that previously didn't feature very highly on the materiality assessments. And although that hasn't specifically been reviewed in the same way as it was initially conducted, we have, integrated those considerations into our KPIs, into the Charter, and into supporting strategies. But I'd be keen to get Petra's thoughts, as she's been here for the whole journey.
I've muted myself again, didn't I? Sorry, yes. So on this, this is an interesting front, because I'd say there's definitely been, a real shift on some topics. Let's be honest, in the last pandemic year, we've seen a massive shift around mental health and well-being, health and safety. So, you've seen a refocus on that, and that's very much would be something, that's echoed in every company. And and that would be, that's something that would have been, looked at when we're planning last, in 2020 for this year. That would have been incorporated into the charter, so that we know that these are some of the kind of key issues that we'll be looking at. I suppose another aspect that's really evolved, I would say, and that's also because we've evolved massively. Maturity has been the whole aspect around social value. It's kind of gone from, a long time ago when it was community investment, it was, around that, to a much more kind of evolved, much more driven. And, in a lot of instances, in some ways we know where we're going, and we try and, we have to engage some customers to, sometimes guide them in a certain direction. Sometimes it's, it's a journey, but I feel like that's another area that's potentially kind of moved on. Another one is ISO. I think the procurement ISO standard, I think a lot of our companies probably do the same. That's really brought a lot of, kind of vigor to that, a part of our other charter. And then we've only introduced that, I think it's been 2 years since on that one, that's evolved in that one. So that's been another one that's massively changed. Done quite a lot around fair payment as well. So there's been different aspects, I suppose, because of different things that have occurred that have impacted how the charter's changed. I think that.
Okay. So in terms of getting employee engagement into the charter, how did you experience? In terms of did you experience pushback at the beginning in terms of people not really understanding how responsible business, what it meant in their particular line of work? And how did you? What kind of initiatives do you think were most successful in getting this kind of engagement and employee buy-in to the charter?
I'll just go very quickly. I think the main thing for us was the change in language, as Candice mentioned. So if you move away from using corporate responsibility, if you move away from it being something that's delivered by the team, if you go into the whole of you are helping us this way, this is how you deliver, this is how different teams, different parts of the business deliver, I think you start creating ownership across the organization in such a way that it starts being something that everyone's doing. And I think that was quite a big thing for us. Before, it was, we had pillars, everyone has, pillars, some priorities, and it was very, corporate responsibility, sustainability, it's that kind of language. But this moved to more, also quite business focused language that's being used by the business, that business can recognize, was really important for us. So that when you're speaking to BD, they understand it. When you're speaking to ethics, they understand it. And what's really interesting now is that actually when you speak to them, they'll tell you back they'll tell you in their own words how they deliver on the charter or whatever, or they'll tell you about it because they're so committed to it, which has been great. But it is an overnight process. It is an overnight process. I think the objectives really help. Because the objectives help everyone sit down, focus, look, think. And everyone, if you get that moment, you start thinking about it, I think, as well. That's really important.
Okay. And where do you see is there an evolution to the Responsible Business Charter beyond kind of tinkering with the KPIs and the elements? Is there kind of more that you want to build into it at all, or as you've created it now, is that kind of a fixed structure that you're kind of rolling with for the time being?
So we recently actually attended the UN Global Compact SDG Ambition Accelerator program, which looks at how to integrate the SDGs into business benchmarks. And that's been quite eye-opening. Again, it's not radical in terms of we're all familiar with the SDGs, but just understanding how to integrate them, the longer term journey that sits behind that integration as well. And Petra is now doing a big piece of work on that. I don't want to steal her thunder, so I'll hand over to her to give you a brief overview of it. But you know, I see that playing a part in the evolution of the Charter as well.
Yeah, so we're going on a big deep dive to examine our KPIs again. Review the interdependencies between them, and looking at the SDGs in a bit more detail to see if we can challenge ourselves further. So watch the space. Hopefully we can come back with even you know, a more robust, more stronger charter, as we do every year, I must emphasize. But it is something that you know, it's as new frameworks come out, new guides, or there's new pushes or new evolutions, you know, we have the opportunity, as you know, we're a slightly new business. We've got a, you know, we've got an opportunity to refocus. So it's an ability to step back at these points in time for any business and think, right, what else could we do? What could we do more? Where could we push harder? So we're doing that piece of work at the moment with the SDGs.
Brilliant. Okay, that's all we've got time for in our quick half-hour bite size. So if anyone has any further questions, please do send them into the SFMI, and we will happily field them to Petra and Candice. Yeah, thank you very much, Candice and Petra. So next month, I beg your pardon, we move on again and we roll on to our next theme, which is setting a credible zero carbon goal. So our guests for this will be the NatWest group. So we're very excited to be welcoming Alan Wickham and his team, head of property services at the NatWest group. So you will receive registrations on how to join into that. Also, I wanted to point out that the SFMI is working towards its annual awards on the 30th of November, in the morning of the 30th of November. In the comments, there is a registration link to that, but this will also be sent round as well as part of kind of future invitations to the bite-sized webinars. And we will also be integrating a January slot in our schedule that you can see on the screen as well. One based on water management, which is a very interesting topic, and that will be pulled together by a new organisation into the SFMI partnership family, which we will be announcing very soon. So thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much to Petra and Candice from EQUANS, and have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.